The author of the book of Hebrews was writing discouraged Christians who needed an encouragement. He spent all of chapter 11 talking about the kingdom heroes who learned to live by faith and what that produced in their life and in their influence and in their eternal rewards. Why did he spend so much time going through the museum of these heroes and looking at their statues? Not because they were perfect, because they are flawed people who still made it to the museum. He did it because of chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. He wants to apply the principle of living by faith to his New Testament audience based on the Old Testament saints' accomplishments. And guess what? You and I are part of that New Testament audience. And so he says in chapter 12, verse 1, since we are surrounded by this cloud of witnesses. You know, in the African-American tradition, when the preacher wants feedback, he will say, can I get a witness? Is there anybody who will give testimony to this truth that I'm communicating? The author of Hebrews says, I got a witness. In fact, I got a whole chapter of witnesses who can give testimony that living by faith works. He says these witnesses surround us. There is another dimension out there of those who've gone before us, whose job it is to be in the stands, encouraging, supporting, affirming our race, that we might finish strong. In that dimension, they give testimony that in this dimension, where we live, work, play, raise families, they give testimony that we can end as a victor and not a victim. You know, in boxing matches, before the fight begins, they will take past champions, put them in the ring and let them shake hands for both of the fighters. The point is to let them know, I've been here before, I've been in this battle before, and you can win. Well, whatever battle you're in right now that's discouraging you and challenging you, others have fought, and they've come out winners. The witnesses want to give testimony that you can win too. So he wants you to focus on who has gone before and gotten through, because that can be true to you, no matter where you're starting. But he says this is what you must do. After learning from chapter 11, he says you must lay aside every encumbrance and sin. Now, encumbrance is not necessarily a sin. It's just something that slows you down or holds you back. When a runner gets on the track to race, they take off their warm-up suit because they don't want to be slowed down. Swimmers will even cut the hair on their chest so that there would be nothing to slow them down in the pool. In other words, is there anything that's limiting you from moving forward? Have you become a passive Christian? Have you become dormant? He says, no, get up and you get going again. You may have been knocked down, but you get up. That's why you have a cloud of witnesses in this dimension, or you ought to in the local church, who pick you up when you fall down, who strengthen you when you are weak so that you don't throw in the towel, but you keep going in the faith. He says, lay aside every encumbrance. And then he says, and the sin that so easily besets. Now, he's not talking about sins in general. He's talking about the sin. The great sin in the book of Hebrews is the sin of unbelief, because all other sins emanate from our failure to trust God, to believe God enough to act like he's telling the truth. He says, put aside your unbelief and start living by faith, believing that God is telling the truth in whatever he says, even when it goes against what you think, how you feel, or the culture that you live in. He says, lay it aside. It reminds me of the college student who took all of his dirty clothes, put them all in a sheet, tied the sheet, and put the sheet in the washer. Well, all of his dirty clothes still came out dirty because he had wrapped them in one thing And that one thing affected the inability to deal with all the other dirty things that he had put in the washer. Well, when you have unbelief, when you fail to trust God by acting like he's telling the truth, then it affects everything else. And the other things you're trying to deal with and get rid of, you're unable to get cleaned up because you've wrapped it in unbelief, the refusal to trust God. So he says, focus on chapter 11. The other folk who've been where you're trying to go and who succeeded. Focus on yourself. Get rid of those things, those systems, even some people who are slowing you down and holding you back. And let's start living by faith and not by the sin of unbelief. But then he hits the apex. He says that we are to be looking unto Jesus. Verse 2, the author and finisher of our faith. Look at the winners, look at yourself, but focus on Jesus. He is the author and finisher. He is the A and the Z. He is the Alpha and the Omega. That means everything in between. He says, piggyback on Jesus. Keep your eye focused on him, because the one who got you started can bring you to a successful completion. Even if they're weak spots, even if they're failures, even if they're things that you regret, if you will put your eyes back on Jesus, because the devil doesn't want you looking at Jesus. If you'll put your eyes on Jesus, he will take you from where you are and still let you get your own statue in his museum of kingdom heroes. He said, look unto Jesus. You know, when I'm walking on the treadmill, which I need to do a little bit more of, I turn on the news because the treadmill tires me out. And so if I think about walking on the treadmill too long because I'm weary, I'll get off. But when I am able to focus on the news or something other than focusing on the treadmill, I'm able to go further and longer because I'm not letting my circumstance on the treadmill define where my focus is going to be. He says, look unto Jesus. You can't ignore reality of pain, of problems, of difficulty and challenges. But he says, keep your eyes focused on Jesus. He is the author and finisher. He will get you across the finish line. He goes on to say that he wants you to understand Jesus' perspective. It says, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. We're filming today in the gallery that celebrates the Via Dolorosa, the road of suffering Jesus took on his way to the cross for us. How could he do this? In his humanity, he didn't want to suffer like that for the sins of the world. He says, Father, let this cup pass from me. He was weary because it was a daunting task God had called him to. But it says, for the joy set before him. Friday was going to be a bad day. Sunday was going to be a great day. So you know how Jesus endured the cross? He kept looking at Sunday, even though he couldn't skip Friday. I know you can't skip where you are. I know you are crying maybe where you are. I know you are disappointed maybe where you are. I know you may be unhappy where you are. But for the joy set before him, I want you to look beyond where you are and thank God for where he's going to take you. I want you to thank him for how he's going to take the mess and turn it into a miracle. I want you to thank him for how he's going to take lemons and turn it into lemonade. I want you to thank him that he can hit a bullseye with a crooked stick. I want you to thank him for what he's going to do in spite of the weariness of where you are. And he concludes, he says, for consider him. See, he still wants you on this Jesus focus. Who has endured such hostility by sinners against himself, so that you will not grow weary and so that you will not lose heart. He says, I want you to keep your focus on Jesus, and that will keep you from quitting and giving up. He says, I don't want you to lose heart. You see, we're back to the theme of Hebrews, discouragement, and all of us have it for a lot of different reasons. There was a little girl who was given as a gift for her birthday a 500-piece puzzle. And she got frustrated after hours of trying to fix it and put it together. She was losing heart, meaning she wanted to quit. She said, Daddy, 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 it's got too many pieces. That's when the father showed her the picture on the front of the puzzle box. It was a picture of Jesus. She said, I want you to work on the puzzle, but I want you to keep your eyes on the picture. And as she kept staring at the picture, the pieces began to come together. What was frustrating her and causing her to lose heart was now being overridden because her focus was on the picture, which allowed her to handle the puzzle. I know right now life may be a puzzle. It may be disjointed, disconnected, the indentations and intrusions and all of that, they're just not fitting together. Can I challenge you with something? Keep your eyes on Jesus. Because if you focus on him, he'll enable you to deal with the puzzles of life. This study has come from the Museum of the Bible. And it was a special time for me to do this study here because located here is my own Tony Evans Study Bible and Tony Evans Bible Commentary. Over many years of the ups and downs of life, the ups and downs of ministry, the ups and downs of family, God in his grace allowed me to be in a museum where on display is the commentary. When I looked at the commentary and thought about it being in this Museum of the Bible, I was reminded that God has a museum. And he wants your statue in it. He wants your faith in it. He wants your portrait in it because you've decided to not just exist, you've decided to be a kingdom hero because you want your own statue of your faithfulness to God be in his museum. May God bless you as you start where you are, get up, keep going, because I think you're beginning to see your victory in sight.